Why doesn't somebody fight the drug price situation, meaning equalization? There's a term. It's called equalization. Nobody wants to mention that term. And I'm not knocking the drug companies. I'm really more knocking the countries than the drug companies because they're forced to do things. But the drug lobby is the strongest lobby in this country, they say, the drug lobby. It's between that and lawyers. And they have a lot of power. But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for. And we'll no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing. But they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal, brutal. And the drug companies actually told me stories. It was just brutal how they forced them. And European Union suing all our companies, Apple, Google, Meta. They're suing all of our companies. They end up, they have judges that are European Union-centric, and they get rewarded $15 billion, $17 billion, $20 billion, and they use that to run their operation. Not going to happen any longer, that I can tell you. So what's been happening is we've been subsidizing other countries throughout the world, not just in Europe, throughout the world. European Union was the most difficult from what I understand. I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up, and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on? He said, so I checked. And it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have. But he was stunned. But it was just one of those stories. And I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person, too. And we argued about it for about half hour. And then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer they've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. Well, I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development, too. It's for their benefit. It was just one of those things. And the other countries would set a price, and they'd meet the price, and they'd say, if you don't meet the price, you can't sell it in our country. I said, well, then you walk away, and, they'll call you back, and they'll sell it in the country. But now they'll have to do that. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. It depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I'd get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically. And Pharma has to say, we're sorry, but we'll not be able to do this any longer to these countries that have been so tough. They've been very tough, nasty.
This is an extraordinary day. This is an issue that, I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator on Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress. We now have a president who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry too. I think they gave you $100 million. Yeah. But he can't be bought, unlike most of the politicians in this country. And he is standing here for the American people. I don't know what, there's writers like Lord Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich who are saying that President Trump is on this side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than President Donald Trump. And I'm very, very proud of you, Mr. President, for your courage, I'll say, because I don't want to be crude, your intestinal fortitude, your stiff spine, and your willingness to stand up for the American people.
I want to get your reaction to the president's announcement on cutting prescription drug prices, Senator.
Well, President Trump just said that he's the one that improved Obamacare, which is actually flat out wrong. He tried over and over to repeal Obamacare when he was president the first time, and House Republicans are moving ahead this week with their bill, which President Trump's asking for, that would cut millions of Americans off of health care. In the last administration, Democrats worked hard to pass legislation that reduces prescription drug prices and caps the out-of-pocket costs for Americans. So President Biden and Democrats in the Senate made significant progress in capping and reducing drug prices in the last Congress. If this executive order has a positive impact on health care and on health care costs, that would be a good thing. But so far, the record of what happened in the first Trump administration and what Republicans are trying to move forward right now in Congress would do the opposite, throw millions of Americans off of health care as they make deep cuts to Medicaid.